Oh man, hey, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the invite. It's very hard to communicate via Skype. I can't see your lovely faces, which may be a benefit or a curse. I'm not going to find out. But it's good to be here. It's good to be here. I love your country. For those who are American, for those who are Canadian, I love the wait lines in your country. Every time I fly to America, we fly through Canada, and I have to wait for an hour and a half in customs just to go back into the airport and go through American customs all over again. Don't know why that is, but it's enjoyable. To the one member of the fraternity from Australia, I'm sorry if I embarrass you, but since you've moved to the UK, I think it's okay. We'll get on just fine. So, 75 years ago, some dramatic things happened in the world. Your great nation bought us Superman. And I think that was pretty much the greatest thing that ever happened. And it's probably the only reason I have the job I have today, is because I fell in love with the idea of creating worlds that are both really similar, with a little change, or both, or totally different. I fell in love with the idea that we have the ability, as Tolkien called it, to be sub-creators. Obviously, we as humans aren't creators. We create nothing ex nihilo, nothing out of nothing. We don't create anything out of nothing. We can only create with what we've been given. So we're sub-creators, as Tolkien coined it. And I love that. I love being a sub-creator. That's what we are as Christian game developers. We're sub-creators. We take the great things we see around us and reposition them, gamify them, and create. So thanks to your nation, I met Superman, and my eyes were opened to a whole new world from that point on. And it held me in good stead to what I'm doing right now. But 75 years ago for us, that was when our studio actually started. And you're thinking, 75 years ago, there was no internet, there wasn't even computers, there was like the postal service. And you'd be exactly right to say that. Our studio began as a postal service charity. What happened is, here in New Zealand, there was a great entrepreneur by the name of Robert Laidlaw, and he essentially began mail order in this country. And he used that same mail order catalogue that he would distribute to farmers throughout rural New Zealand. He took that catalogue and essentially he put in it some adverts to say, who would like us to use the same system of the postal network to put Bible studies into the hands of your children. Obviously, you're in rural communities, it's hard to get to a local church. How can we equip you to teach your kids biblical literacy? And so 75 years ago that started, and it became what we call the Postal Sunday School movement here in New Zealand. And as you can imagine, that went really well. There were a whole lot of farmers and even prisoners, people overseas. At its heyday, this was reaching a whole lot of people, both here in New Zealand and all over the world. But I don't know about you, but I haven't sent anything via mail in a long time. And we don't have eBay like you have eBay, so I guess there's still a bit of eBay-age and there's still a bit of Amazon-age. But for us, we very rarely send snail mail anymore. We very rarely get out a pen and write a letter. We just email. So really, what's the point of Sunday school lessons being sent in the post? So the trust had to re-examine everything about themselves. How are we teaching young people in this generation? How are we connecting with them? Are we connecting with them in a way they want to be connected with? Or are these things that we're sending them just going in the rubbish bin or getting ignored? The ones that do come back to markers, is that efficient? Is it working? And for 5 years, the trust just examined their plans. And what happened is a young guy and his dad, who are a little consulting team.
Go! Yay! Skype!
Brownie face. Skype is trying.
Oh, how did we spell his name on the Twitter tag again?
Tim Cleary.
Okay, thank you.
Was it that? Hey? Are you there?
Yes.
Was it that boring, or what happened?
Sorry, you're right during describing the postal change and how the board was having to rethink things. So continue from there, sir.
And then you got bored, so you closed the conversation.
I was 30 feet away. It wasn't me.
I don't believe you. Anyway. The things I can do. So what happened is, they decided they'd create a game, and obviously I was on the fringes as this guy who liked to dream up imaginary worlds and play in them. And, you know, on my desk in front of me is the entire Justice League action figure set, the Justice League of America action figure set. You got Hulk holding up books up there, you know. I'm into it. So they said, they brought me in to write the story and to be the world builder. Essentially, that's my job. I'm the world builder here, creative director, if you will. And so we set about kind of partitioning the trust so that it would still do the postal stuff for the time being, while we set about developing a new way to do it. And we did settle on a game, and that game has now been 2 years in production, and we still haven't quite finished our alpha, but that's because none of us had ever built a game before. And we now have, and it's good, I think. And hopefully next year you'll get to play it. Hopefully next year I'll be there. You can punch me for wasting an hour and a half if you like. We'll get to play the game maybe. We'll see how we go. So here we are, 2 years later. We've got an alpha, but I just want to go through a little bit of the process we went through with you. Hopefully it's not boring. Hopefully you enjoy it. Hopefully you'll understand the funding stresses, the scrum deadlines, the sprints, all the stuff that the loops and the troops, I like to call them, that you go through to create something that's good. For us, we started with this book here, Jane McGonigal's Reality is Broken. Has anybody read that? Just shout because I can't hear you.
Yes!
Is that, you're shouting because you read it, or you're shouting because I'm good looking?
Good looking.
Yes! Yeah, okay. So Jane McGonigal, in this book, and if you haven't got it, just get it on Amazon. It's like $12 and it's free shipping because America's the land of the free, right? And it's great. This book changed our life. She obviously stipulates that actually our reality is broken, that the games can fix it, and oh my goodness, we should play more games. And she essentially talks about power of games to boost global happiness, and everybody goes, oh yeah, that's possible. But I honestly actually do believe now, having read that book, having spent time around Jane and a few of her contemporaries, I realised that the reality is that I think games can change the world if we do them right. And so we were really inspired by that to create a game that wasn't just teaching kids things in their heads. It had to teach them things in their hearts, and it had to be practical. It had to have some sort of real-world elements that actually got them operating as agents of change in their lives. I mean, the gospel is a story about a man who was a revolutionary who went to all lengths for his people to save us, and therefore our response has to be one of action as well. So we can't take kids out of reality to let them sit there in comfortability. We have to take them out of reality to teach them something, and then bring them back into reality where they can action that, where they can live, if you will, right side up in an upside down world. So I'll talk about how we're going to do that in a little bit. But we're also really inspired by the work of a guy named Don Tapscott. It's DONTAPSCOT. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a well-known futurist. He kind of predicted the rise of the internet. He's a pretty onto it guy. He's not a sidekick. He's not a medium. He's a futurist. What that means is he's a guy who thinks about the philosophy of the future and how we can embrace the change that's probably coming, and he takes punts at what the future would look like. And each and every one of those punts for Don has pretty much come right. Don prescribes to a thing called reverse mentoring, where he gets young people to mentor him because young people do things better than older people. No offense if you're an older person. Sometimes young people do things better than me, especially when it is adapting to technology, collaborating, creativity on a lot of levels. Don't be offended by what I'm saying. Just understand that generationally, we've all learned differently. So what's happened is we've gone in our world, people who are passive receivers, the generation that went through the invention of TV and then the colorization of TV and then the mass throw out of TV have been essentially programmed at an age where their brain is malleable to essentially sponge up information. We call that neural plasticity, that training of the brain to sponge information. So in their formative years, they were learning from people on the stage, they were learning from people on the TV, they were learning from people up the front. With us now, the generation that's coming through, I'm probably on the cusp of it, so don't be offended. I'm talking about the good and the bad of both generations. But probably now, this generation that's coming has grown up clicking like. They've grown up going, I want to be in on this. I want to collaborate on that Google Doc. I want to upload this to YouTube. I want to be a part of that finger that's flying at the screen. And so they've been wired differently. So how can we expect an education system that was built for young people who had been wired to be sponges to work for young people who have been wired to collaborate? This is so much fun. And so we have to think differently. Oh my goodness, you're amazing! Sorry. My soy latte just arrived. It's very early in the morning here, so please excuse me. Anyway, where were we? So how can you expect people to learn the same? You know what I'm talking about, right? You guys are gamers, you guys are creators of games, you're game developers who love Jesus, which is awesome, right? So you know what I'm saying? You're trying to create experiences for people who don't learn by being passive receivers, who learn by being actively engaged. And so you're with me, which I really appreciate. So what then happened, cheers, is we had to think about how to make this happen. Obviously it's not cut and dry, it's not easy to build a game. I think we probably thought it was easier than it is. We met with the chairman of our GDA here, Game Developers Association here in New Zealand, and we sat down with him and we built a Bible, you know, a game Bible, and for a game that we were never going to build. We spent so much money building this game Bible with him. We're spending consultants' rates, and we built a really cool game, but it was never going to work. It was never going to do what we needed it to do. See, from the get-go, we set out to teach three things. Just three things from the Bible. If we could teach these things, we would have achieved what we wanted to achieve. And those three things was that the Bible is one complete story. It's not a bunch of Sunday school stories that we can just throw out at random intervals. It's one story from beginning to end, from creation to fall, through to redemption, through to a new creation. And we wanted to teach that. We also wanted to teach that Jesus is the center point of the story, and he exists throughout the entire story. He's there. And we thirdly wanted to teach that you're not the hero. That's not good for games. How do you teach that in games? How do you teach that you're not the hero in a game? But isn't games about agency? Isn't games about me being actually able to interact, you know, to make change in a world, to do things, to save the princess? Yeah, it is about that, but for us, it couldn't be. Because we had those three things to teach, and if number three was, you're not the hero, then you couldn't be the hero. So, from that framework, that's where our development of our game had to start. So, we went back to the drawing board and we built a game. And it started actually with a story. Because our story, as 21st century Christians, our story as 21st century Christians started with a story too. It's ancient, it's beautiful. And so we decided that we would use a story to guide ours, to help make, I guess, what feels to a lot of young people like an ancient historical document that reminds them of their grandparents, into something living and breathing again. And this isn't foreign, this isn't heretical even. Great people like C.S. Lewis have done it before us, and I guess for me as a writer and a dreamer, I I honestly looked at it and really wanted to believe that we could do for a generation what C.S. Lewis did for ours with this game. So let me tell you a story for a little while, and then I'll get into how we make the story and the game drive young people to the scriptures. The story starts with a great engineer, and the great engineer comes upon a land that is covered in a dense fog. It's a valley surrounded by hills. And this land is going to be steampunk. Have you heard of steampunk?
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. But you yelled a little bit too that time. No, I'm kidding. This one. This land's going to be steampunk, just so you know. I should have said that from the beginning. We are creating a steampunk virtual world for young people. A little bit MMO, a little bit RPG, a little bit virtual world. We're not sure. We're gender bending. And genre bending, not gender bending. Go very wrong. And so what happens here is the great engineer finds this valley, and it's full of this dense fog, but it's beautiful, and it has the potential to be something incredible. But the fog is a real issue for the great engineer. See, the fog is a real negative thing. It brings out the base nature in people. It so encourages just some real negative behaviour. We're talking selfishness. We're talking hardship. We're talking sin. Right? That's what this fog is. This fog is sin. But the great engineer is more than capable to triumph over sin. He builds great engines and scatters them throughout this land that he's going to call Aphasia. He scatters these great engines all about, and he turns them on, and he starts to disperse the fog. And in this valley, he builds a great empire. We're talking various locations, Ever City, where he lives, where he has his city. We're talking no man's land in a little town like Bethlehem. We're talking the giant sea forest, a big, plentiful expanse like Canaan. We're talking the snowmoors, giant rolling tundra of snow, a little bit like Egypt if it was snow instead of sand. And this world is incredible. And you want to be in it. You want to be in it. Trust me. I'm telling you. I've seen it. You want to be there. If I could get a plane, put you all in it, you'd be quite excited. But it's not real. It's in here. And in the game, which is, I guess, on the computer that I'm talking to you on. And the great engineer builds this place with his bare hands and with his voice. And one day, he stands on the top of a hill, which is called the Old Mount. And he stands at a place called Engineer's Stand, and he presses a little button on his console, and 7 great zeppelins come out from their hiding places in the mountains and start to fly off beyond Aphasia's borders, rigged with loudspeakers, inviting people to come to this new land, to be a part of this collaborative, unified space, to bring colour and atmosphere and body to this world that the great engineer has created. And the great engineer comes and sits on his throne, sits on the throne in the room of great engines, and he uses a thing called the ether light, and the ether light powers those great engines. And there he rules over the people. People love him. He's not an absent king, he's a very present king. And he rules over the people well. And for many, many years, Aphasia grows, it blossoms with collaboration, with unity. It's beautiful. It's really something special. And the Zeppelins keep flying. They keep flying. They keep inviting people to Aphasia, and more come. One such person is a man named Lucky. Lucky is a musician. He's got a band. It's probably called Guns N' Moses. I'm not sure. and they come to Aphasia. And they do concerts, and Aphasia sways to the rhythm of their music, which is cool. And the great engineer loves them. He says, hey, why don't you come and play? Why don't you stay? Stay and be part of my court. You can have Aphasia listening to music. We can write songs together. We can sing together. We can create something truly beautiful together here. Why don't you be part of it? And Lucky agrees. Lucky and the band stay, and they become part of Aphasia. They become part of the court, and the nation loves them. The nation loves them almost as much as the great engineer. And I think that just starts to get to Lucky after a while. the fact that he's not the most loved man in Aphasia. I think Lucky was used to being the most loved man everywhere he went, but for the first time in his life, Lucky was second. And that wasn't okay for Lucky, so Lucky started to make a plan. Lucky wanted to take over, and Lucky did so. I mean, it's easy to convince humans to go for the next shiny thing, right? Isn't it? We've got iPhones, we've got iPads, we've got iBibles, you know? We're always after the next shiny thing. So for Lucky, it was easy to encourage the people of Aphasia to riot at the palace gate. And then for Lucky, it was easy for him to bribe the guards to the palace gardens, for him to burn through the palace gardens and into the throne room. And now, standing in front of the great engineer, Lucky looks at the great engineer, and the great engineer looks back. Lucky staunch, the great engineer stauncher, but with tears in his eyes. Because he looks towards the palace gates and he sees the people rioting. He could stop Lucky, but he wouldn't want to, because that could risk a war that would hurt his people. And at the end of the day, he cares more about his people than they care about him. So the great engineer takes the ether light, the battery that powers the great engines, and he steps off his throne and he walks out into Aphasia to be heard of, to be spoken of, to be remembered longingly, but never to be seen again. And Lucky takes his seat on a throne that doesn't work anymore because the ether light's gone. And he tries to rule a nation that never really wanted to be ruled by anybody but the great engineer, but he tries and he does so. And 200 years later, the player washes into a world that has been ruled by Lucky the usurper now for that long, 200 years. And it's in disrepair. The fog has rolled back in. It's a dystopian wasteland. Sure, the places are still there. The giant sea forest is still there. It's still a place of beauty, but it's been tarnished. Industrialization has ruined the great trees. They're full of, factories building automatons so that the usurper can continue to rule, but by fear, not by love. The giant sea forest is ruined. The snowmoors have been taken over by barons because it's on the edge of Evercity's eye, and so the usurper can't quite rule there, but the barons are just as brutal, they're just as evil. And you wash up into this world. You wash up in a place called No Man's Landing. No Man's Landing, I guess, is an allegorical equivalent of Bethlehem. We call it a gentleman's hell and a salvage's heaven. It's a salvage town in the steampunk world now. What's a fisherman look like in a steampunk world? A fisherman looks like a salvager. And so you wash up in this salvage town of No Man's Landing, and you don't know really why you're here until you meet a man named Joshua. Now, to the grand populace, Joshua looks like a vagrant. He's in a red coat with a hood, and he's hairy, and he's hairy, and he's hairy, like most people probably speaking at their conference. And and he asks you to join a resistance. Now, it's not a revolution, it's a resistance. It's about resisting and making change that way. It's different to any other kind of, I guess, gameplay trope you've ever seen before. You're not going to start a revolution. It's not Red Faction. You're not going to wage war against crime at night. It's not Batman Arkham City. You're starting a resistance. You're going to be different. You're going to be subversive. And so you begin to help form this resistance. How does that tie into the Bible? It's really cool. No, it does. It ties into the Bible, I promise. So the great engineer is God, and he founds the land, and he builds it, and he sends people out and says, come to me, come hang out, let's do this thing. And then the fall happens, and humans are tricked, and the great engineer, for our own sake, just says, okay, and everything goes to custard. And you wash up. You become part of the story. You do become part of the story. It's not the hero of the story, Joshua. Joshua is going to be the hero of the story. You will find out one day that Joshua is the great engineer. And that he is about taking the world and bringing it back to him. You will find a guy named Loren in No Man's Landing, who is Abraham. And with Joshua's help, Abraham will write a manifesto of blessing, essentially the Abrahamic covenant, that will become the framework for the resistance going forward. You will rescue the resistance from captivity in the snow moors. You will take them to the giant sea forest where they will destroy the Jericho factory, a massive factory building zeppelins and automatons for the great engine, for the usurper. Sorry. You will be there as Ever City falls at the hands of the Babylonians who come up from the steamworks, though they're not called Babylonians, they're called downworlders. You will be a part of this grand narrative. You will meet Dion, the 12-year-old boy who teaches the entire resistance how to destroy Goliath-class automatons. You will live in this story. You will be there as they walk Joshua up the old mount. And you will watch him die. You will watch ether rain from the sky as he does. And you'll realize that they've done a terrible thing. But you'll watch as he comes back, only to leave again. But to leave again having given you extra power, having given you extra ability, having left the resistance in the hands of a man named Zor, who up until then had been trying to kill you as part of the usurper's army. So you will play through this entire grand narrative, and you'll engage with it the whole way. You know, we've got game loops that will encourage you to be doing things, to be great stewards of the world. You will be watering trees, you'll be picking up litter, you'll be tearing down propaganda, you'll be speaking out against oppression, you'll be setting captives free, literally and figuratively. Everything you do will give you ether. Ether is a substance that drives the world. Ether is what the etherlight created. It drives the great engines. And it can only be created by a selfless act. Ether, as I said, can only be created by a selfless act, which is great. It's genius. It's the best thing I came up with ever, because the reality is, if you try and make ether by doing a selfless act, it's no longer a selfless act, so you can't create ether. And so the resistance has a monopoly on ether. And you're going to collect ether, and you're going to bring it, and you're going to start charging those great engines. You start to get the fog out of the place, which means you're getting the fog mites out of the place, which means you're getting the usurper out of the place, which means you're getting the automatons out of the place, which means you're living in a resistance that could literally change Aphasia. But I guess for us, it wasn't enough to just be changing Aphasia. It's a fake world. I care about it. I've had dinner with the mayor of No Man's Land. I've babysat his children. I taught his wife how to cook lemon meringue. But it's not a real world. I've done that all in my head, in my imagination. The Did you hear that? Everybody okay?
I don't know.
Was it really loud there? I don't know what it was. What was it? Anyway, I'll move on.
It was either.
If you're ready to move on, are we okay?
Yes.
Yes!
Right. Somebody call a paramedic for that lady. She was. I believe in you. You'll be okay.
Bipolar, freaked out by loud noise suddenly. Okay.
I'm so sorry about that.
It's not your fault.
Have you seen Anchorman?
No, but I've seen a computer freak out on me like that before.
If I go, loud noises! You okay?
Yeah,
Let's move on. Where was I? I don't know. I got distracted by that strange noise that distracted all of us. So obviously it's not enough to just make change in Aphasia. We've got to make change in the real world. And for us that starts by actually getting young people to connect the allegory, to connect the fact that Aphasia is just a rewritten story of the Bible. So we have to literally help young people join the dots. So we've created what we call a Joining the Dots module. It uses a character called the Postman, which obviously appeals to our history with the postal Sunday school movement. And the Postman lives in a basement in No Man's Landing, and you go to the Postman, and he will help connect the stories for you. Because obviously there's 3 stories taking place that all need to be connected. There's the story of Aphasia, there's the story of the Bible, and then there's the story of our life in 21st century Earth. on 21st century Earth, right? So the postman becomes the bridge between those three worlds. He helps connect you with the fact that Egypt, the snowmoors is Egypt, right? And the barons are the pharaohs. And the gods of the snowmoors are at war, essentially, in the story with the God of the Israelites, the God of our God, right? And literally, the plagues are God saying, I'm more powerful than your false gods, right? So in a gameplay setting, you play through that, right? But then we have to translate that to the Bible story so that you can understand those links. But what does that mean to us in little old New Zealand or in little old United States of America? You're like 235 years old now, aren't you?
Woohoo!
Woo! Anyway. What does that mean? Well, actually, it means this. It means that there are still false gods warring for the souls of humanity on this earth, you know? And so Egypt is one big mall, you know? It's one big commodity. So how does the God of the ageless, timeless, ancient of days God, he's still at war with materialism. He's still at war with the gods of our society. And so we're teaching all these things through this Joining the Dots module. And it's modular. The reason I say it's modular is because we need to make money from this project. Early on, we obviously realized that we can't do this on the smell of an oily rag forever. We have to make money. So we're working really hard at the moment to connect with publishers, primarily in the United States. Obviously, you guys are a great market. You're a big market. You're a Christian market. See, the problem here is in New Zealand, we're essentially a post-Christian nation. And so we're quite a small market when it comes to this. So we're trying to connect with your people. We're trying to connect with the American market and connect with curriculum providers all across the states to work out how we can help them create curriculum that can tie in with this modular postman setting, with this joining the dots scenario. So we can actually take existing curriculum and tie it into our game, or we can help write more curriculum. And so we can roll this game out, the Etherlight out for the Lutherans, for the Methodists, for the Pentecostals, for the AOG, with a different modular postman, but a similar gameplay, a similar game, the same world. And so that's one of the things we're doing at the moment. Just working on that. So I guess coming to the kind of, I said I'd try and be an hour and then have some time for questions. So we've got about 15 minutes left. Where are we at now? I said we're at alpha. We are currently building a technical demo. We're currently building a not quite vertical slice of the world, but a decent stab at the world. So we can see how all these things are going to work. We can have No Man's Landing and we can explore it. We can play the quest through with Abraham and the birth of the resistance. We can interact with Joshua. We can work out how that looks, how it's going to feel, how long players are going to want to spend. Obviously, we've got to get them within the first 10 minutes of gameplay if we want them to stay in this world and actually realise that the Bible's one complete story. You won't learn that playing just one quest. So we've got a lot of work to do there. And we've chosen a freemium model because obviously we want young people to be able to play this for free. We don't want any boundary to them learning the scriptures to be a part of the biblical story. Excuse me. Needed a caffeine right there. We don't want any boundary to them connecting with the story. So we're going with a freemium model, which means we need you to buy afros and mohawks. We need you to buy laser spears and mechanical dinosaurs. I don't know. We just need you to buy extra things you don't actually need, but we need you to buy them. I've got a kid. I've got a comic book collection I need to keep up. And so we're going freemium. Whoa! It's stressful. It's scary. Freemium. It's good, but it's scary because, as I said, we don't want anybody to miss out on what we're doing, what we're creating. So that's where we're at. That's what we're doing at the moment. We're creating that, obviously, so we can show that to funders, show that to the curriculum providers we're trying to connect with in this.
Oh, that must be some notification from Windows or something.
Must be exactly what I was disconnected.
Because the volume is probably really high because this microphone isn't sensitive enough. So it sounds really loud, but my actually is yeah.
Something like that. Tim to the next.
Oh man, Seattle, you must hate me.
This is Portland!
I know it's Portland, but surely there's people from Seattle there. And let's be honest, Portland, it's just a poor man's Seattle, isn't it?
We have better tea than they do! And more books!
Hey, they get at Starbucks, so let's not
Exactly,
hate on them.
Starbucks.
We don't need Starbucks, we have hipster alternates. Starbucks is too mainstream.
Anyway, where was I? Seattle. Yeah, we were in Seattle at the start of this year, and we'll be there again starting next year, connecting with curriculum providers and showing them this technical demo. And then we're building an alpha as well, a beta as well. So a complete vertical slice of the whole game, which is pretty exciting. We've had to grow our team to do that, and look, we're pretty pumped about what we're doing. I wouldn't be up this early. Presenting to you on a Saturday if we weren't. We think we've got something really good to share. And we want to share with the world. It's not for New Zealand. We realised really early on that the budget we're working with, the scope of the game we're creating can't be sustained by New Zealand. It isn't for New Zealand. A lot of great things. Just, I'm Australian here, so I'm just going to talk up the Kiwis for a moment. And I don't like doing that. We're constantly at war, not really, not physical war, but in our minds. The Kiwis, a lot of good stuff's come out of New Zealand. I can't believe it. Look at the Lord of the Rings movies. That was created by hobbits. These people down here have a lot to offer the world, and this game's one of those things. So I guess what can we use from you? What can you do as game developers over there? One, I just like you to think I'm really cool, because that would be good for my self-esteem. You connect with me on Twitter and on Facebook. Connect with us any way you want. Does anybody ask me any Twitter questions? I haven't been checking. Obviously, Benjamin said hello. Soma Games. Oh look, you've been Soma Games. Are you there? Is Soma Games there?
Yes.
Yes.
Soma
There you go,
Games.
there's so many games.
We did think, and I did say we're Jesus with guns, and then angels sang. You're so right. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a minute. Oh, look at you! I've neglected Twitter. Oh, anyway, let's talk a
Why do we
minute.
talk to you on Twitter? I missed that part.
And so what we need from you is we need you to like us. We obviously we're from New Zealand, and America's like the big brother of the world. We need you to be our big brother. We need you to go, hey, these guys in New Zealand, they're not busy shearing sheep. They're busy creating world-class games, and you need to check them out. We need you to be talking to your churches, talking to your communities, talking to your Christian schools, if there are any near you, about what this game could do for them, about how we could be a part of them creating curriculum and going forward with curriculum. But thirdly, I guess we just want you to think we're awesome, to wonder how you can contribute, to wonder when we set up our office in Seattle, sorry Portland, when we set up our office in Seattle, how you can come work for us or whatever. We just want you to be the best brand ambassadors you can be, hopefully, if you've been inspired by anything I've said today. Because we really appreciate you, we appreciate everything you're doing, and as I said, I wish I could be there in the flesh, so that you Portland people could punch me, so you Seattle people could cuddle me, so you one Australian from England could go, wow, you're a cool Australian like me, and so you Canadians could go, I'm sorry about our airport. So next year I long to be there with you. But until then, do you have any questions? That's probably me in terms of content. Hopefully I've got through a lot of it. Have you got any questions there? I'll check the Twitter machine in case there's any on here, but any questions at all?
What are the really loud things about?
Sorry, we will need to big microphone. I can't.
I'll translate. Any questions? I see one here.
I love the story, and if you relate it, then that'd be great.
He loves the story.
I
Hold
love the
on.
story. It sounds like a very linear story, though, and I'm not quite sure how you're going to fit that into an MMO. Are you?
Hello, Netbug. How are you? Is that Netbug?
No.
You did ask me that on Twitter. Netbug asked me that on Twitter too, I think, really.
Okay.
How do we fit such a linear story? Yeah, so essentially what we've done is we've created, let me just pull up a little piece of paper there that you can't see, because I don't want to make you sign NDAs. See this? This is just the biblical story, right? So, from woe to go. And so you're playing through these quests that are taking you on a journey towards redemption up here, fall over here. So they're essentially your key quests. But then you've got a whole lot of side quests. I guess my job as the world builder, creative guy, is to balance theology and theatrics. We are creating a game that we honestly believe could, without the Bible, stand on its own right as a fun game, as a game you want to continue to play. We've amalgamated other studios into ourselves just to do that, who have created successful virtual worlds. And so we're creating not just a biblical game, but a great game that is biblical. And so those quests will continually drive you back to the narrative, the scripture narrative, as side quests. Everything is geared to wanting you to be able to play those biblical quests. Is that difficult? Absolutely. Have we got it nailed? Not necessarily. But we're working really hard at doing that. I hope that answers your question.
Next question. Ellen?
What's your favorite pizza topping?
What's your favorite pizza topping?
My favourite pizza topping is one from a little pizza place just down the road called Cgdc. It's Italian. And my favourite pizza is their Cgdc pizza. It's kind of like ham, obviously tomato paste, ham, pineapple, capsicum, mushroom, kind of everything without the funky meats. I don't like salami, and I don't like weird little fishies. I think the fish should stay with the Little Mermaid and keep her company.
Charlie, what's your question?
Can you describe the team there a little bit? I mean, who else is involved? What do you have? Who's doing art? How about describe the rest of the team?
Can you give us some insight about your team? You know, how many
Yeah.
programmers, artists?
Yeah, sure. Sure. So I've just also got a question here. How did I get personally involved with the project? So I'll answer that all in one. It started with a guy, Brooke, who was a young guy with dreadlocks down to his kneecaps, who kind of said, look, what if we create a game? And he did that. Him and his dad kind of took the trust in the direction it needed to go. They hired a CEO who started to build a team. They hired a creative director at that point who carried on for a little while. And then they hired myself as a writer. And the creative director moved on at one stage there, and I stepped into, I guess, that role. We've got a great office manager. We've got a great team who still run the PSSM part of our company, the postal part. And we've got an in-house artist here. Early on, we made a technical partnership with a studio down the road called Custard Square. And they they've built one virtual world called Dinosaurus, but now they are specialised in hidden object puzzle games. So everybody, if you're a 30 to 55-year-old woman with an iPad, they probably make games for you, those kind of hidden object, mystery, romance, Mills and Boon game things. It's weird. Not really Mills and Boon, that was probably a hyperbole, but you know what I'm saying. And so they do all that, they're doing our tech. But in the last little while, obviously, we've realised the need to just kind of up the ante on everything. And a studio in Wellington, which is our capital city here in New Zealand, though it is smaller than Auckland, where we're based, they had a great studio there that decided to close down. So we took their art director and their technical lead, and we fused them into our company. And so since doing that, obviously, you can imagine we popped the clutch on the whole clutch. I thought that was comment. We popped the clutch on the whole company and up the ante doing that. So we've got a tech team now. I think we've got 3 or 4 coders down at the other studio, plus our tech lead here. We've got 2 artists in-house, 2 artists off-site, and another 2 artists with our technical studio. Brooke, the guy with the dreadlocks down to his kneecaps, is now producing us, and I'm here creating, and I've got 2 writers that work with me. So it's a pretty big team now, pushing forward pretty well. Yeah.
Can you share any art with us?
Can you show any art, or is it all nudge, nudge?
Well, look, I've got a few things here I can print out for you. I can show you. Did I just hear angels sing? I think I yeah, so that's the mark of the great engineer, and obviously our branding. There's so much more to show you. Not that I can right now. I promise I will show you. You can see more if you do sign up to our mailing list, which you can do on our website, secondcitystudios.com. Just checking here on the Twitter machine. How long have we been working on this and what engine are we using? We are building it in Flash and we're porting to iOS because we need it to work on iPads with education the way it is in New Zealand. Most students in New Zealand in the next 2 years will be using iPads. So we are making that a real priority to make the virtual world work on the iPad. But we are primarily building in Flash. It's isometric 2.5D game, and we've been working on it for about 2 and a bit years now. Are we sharing this internationally, and what plans do we have in the market of education in England? We've got a great friend in Seattle who now works for us, Seth Crofton. You may or may not know him. He's going to be with you tonight. He's working with us, connecting us. He's kind of our American ambassador between him and myself. We do most of the connections over there in the States. Obviously, I'm here digitally. He'll be there physically tonight. He's our main point of connection. He kind of sets up the first dates, and then I awkwardly turn up for a blind date wearing a red rose in my left pocket and a blue jacket. And we'll see how that goes. So yeah, he'll be there tonight if you do have any more questions. And if you have, if you can help us with our international plans to market this with educators in the US, please don't hesitate to tweet me. Thank you, John. I'm glad Seattle welcomes me. Oh, Netbug 009, you're the girl who freaked out at the sound issue and talks too much. You don't talk too much, don't say that. I think I've answered everybody's questions on Twitter. Is there post-game content? Yeah, okay, great question. And thank you for telling me that Portland is too hipster for me. Interesting. Too hipster for me. I wear hipster glasses. And
Those are 3D glasses. That's cheating.
what do you mean they're 3D glasses? How can you tell on Skype they are 3D glasses? They're Superman 3D glasses. Sorry, somebody's asked about funding. I'll get to that question in just a minute. Post-game content. Yeah, so what we're doing is we actually want to partner with other people doing similar things. So basically, our game is aimed at 8 to 12-year-olds, 8 to 14-year-olds, somewhere in there. And so we're hoping that there will be other projects, and if there's not, we'll create them once we're finished with the Etherlight that can guide them into the game. And we do have one property that we're going to use to guide people into the game that we're trying to get into the hands of curriculum providers over there as well. That's another property I can't talk about because it's in negotiations. But we have, we're hoping that there will be people who either A, B, or C creating it, inspired by us to create it, or can help us create it in the upper tier, so that there's other, I guess, physical manifestations of this game for other age groups that they can continue to learn in. Otherwise, I don't think we lose them. I hope that this game we're creating fiction deep enough that you'll be 45 years old, sitting in front of the TV, and suddenly you'll realise, oh my goodness, that's what that meant. And that'll be pretty awesome, in my opinion. So we're hoping that the things they learn as 8 to 14-year-olds playing this game will be with them for life. Funding. Funding's been interesting. Because we were originally that trust, the PSSM Trust, the Postal Sunday School Movement Trust, we have a lot. We've had a lot of really generous people who have backed that iteration of our mission, and so we had to go through a process of kind of educating them and how we were going to change and why we were going to change to this new mission of digitizing biblical literacy. And a lot of them came with us, and so they've been amazing. They're literally dying to support us because they're quite old. And so people are giving us money in their wills. They are being kind of funny, kind of not. They've been so generous, to be honest, to fund us going forward because they really do believe in then connecting with the coming generation via post, and now connecting with the coming generation via digital gaming. So we've been really blessed. That money, however, is drying up because that... Is there anybody of that donor group in this room? Because that donor group is dying out, literally. And so we have to look at now new 21st century funding models. We're going to do some Kickstarter stuff. We're going to sell a few properties and a few things over here. We're going to, I don't know, rob a few banks.
Bake sale.
We're not exactly sure. But we're positive. Well, what we've got is great to show funders. But no, now we are going to have to enter into a pretty aggressive funding recruitment strategy, bank robbing, pipeline.
Bake sale.
Yeah.
Next question?
Are they going to become a permanent team after the MMO is finished?
Say that again?
Are they going to be a permanent team after the MMO is finished?
Obviously, when the Christian MMO takes off wildly, you'll be able to keep the team together, correct?
Yeah, I think we'll keep. Obviously, we'd get rid of the partner studio. We don't spend too much time with them, but our team's great. Our team will, when this is over, and I don't think it'll be over for a while. When this is over, our team will move on to other games. Even as a studio already, we are doing some side projects for companies within New Zealand, helping them gamify some of their systems, or we're doing a lot of work with education in terms of moving educators into the 21st century and connecting them with digital learners. So when the game is created, we are still going to be so involved in the gaming world, in the education world, and we, I can see us making other games. I can see us writing comics, writing curriculum. There'll be a lot to come from us once the game's up and running. And obviously, being an MMO, a virtual world, there's always more content to create for the world. Even now, we're creating areas that are essentially just seeding. So if people notice that there's a whale submarine, they'll realise that there's, maybe an underwater place to examine. But if they don't notice it, we won't make it. And there's things like that all over the world.
One more question, Thomas?
Yeah, I'm just curious why it's an MMO, because I feel like we're kind of in a post-MMO world, like even Blizzard's struggling to come up with something after World of Warcraft. So I'm just curious why they're going that path.
So the question is, why did you go MMO? It seems like the general trend is that those may be on the downturn.
Thank you for that. Look, we're primarily virtual world with MMO elements. I guess for us, the virtual world, the collaboration, the social aspect is what's going to get young people there. It's the questing that's going to teach them, and the fact that they can group quest that's going to teach them. So I don't think it's. I think the world's ready for a new vehicle for that. Not necessarily. I don't think we've got MMO fatigue. I think we've got World of Warcraft fatigue. And I think when we can create new vehicles to engage in quest learning, we'll see a rise again of the MMO. And because we're a virtual world, as I said, we're a genre-bending type game. We've got other tropes and game loops and mechanics that are going to keep you in the world anyway.
Any more questions? Right here, Mike.
So how are they going to handle the hardware end of it, the server capacity, or the game gets bigger than they imagined it? What are their plans for that?
How are you planning to do the servers, especially scaling if you do take off wildly like you're going to?
Yeah, servers and scaling is probably above my pay grade. Well, it's not above my pay grade, but it's above my knowledge. level. Essentially though, we are praying really hard that technology catches up with our dreams. There are many things we can do, there are many things, we're working on that, we're aware that our ambition is bigger than our capacity currently. But look, we've made great inroads in the last 3 years in terms of hardware and software, and so we're believing that by the time we launch in July, with what we launch with in July, there'll be the technology to sustain what we want to launch with in July. But by the time we're 1 year into the iterative process, we're 2 years in, technology will have caught up and will allow us to do bigger, bolder, greater things, to go where no man has gone before.
And so that's July 2014, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we're hoping to go into open beta July 2014. And essentially a soft launch.
Lorraine?
I just want to know what engine they're using. Did I miss that part?
Flash.
That's a good question. It's Flash and you're porting to iOS?
Yes, correct.
A follow-up? Do you have a follow-up?
Flash comes in a lot of different formats.
Yeah, the
Can
question
you
was,
give more
is there an
details
engine
about
on
Is there an
iOS?
engine behind the Flash?
Which one, I guess, iOS, what's the engine gonna be?
Flash, if you're using air, Flash can export directly from air.
The infrastructure. Yeah, I probably can't help you too much further than to tell you. There are things I can and can't tell you. At this point, I've been okay to tell you. I can tell you it's Flash. I can tell you that we're porting to iOS. I can tell you that we have ways to do that. But I can tell you that we are thinking differently about that. And that's probably why I can't tell you certain things.
Understood.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
I'm not a bad guy. I'm a good guy.
With special 3D effects.
Special 3D effects. Absolutely. Absolutely. Sorry, got distracted. The studio's starting to fill up. We've got a board meeting about to start.
We'll go ahead and take one more question if you have.
Look, as many questions as we have, I'm fine.
Oh, I see, you want to go late to the board meeting now?
I do. I want to go late to the board meeting.
So it's a BORED meeting.
It isn't. I won't say that out loud, but yes.
Got it.
Are they going to try to integrate it with the Oculus Rift?
Do you have any plans to integrate with the Oculus Rift, the little 3D rig, whatever that is?
Yeah, look, I've heard about that today. Well, not today, but I've heard about that very recently in terms of the Minecraft. That's the Minecraft tech currently, right? That you can potentially walk around on the treadmill and yeah. Is that right?
It's something you put over your head, right, Thomas?
Yeah.
Yes. It's
Yeah.
more immersive.
Yeah, but they're creating a treadmill for it as well now.
Oh, excellent. Maybe I'll do some
Specifically
waiting.
for Minecraft. Look, I don't know. Look, we're keeping all that stuff in our heads. In terms of just like for the last 2 years, we've made sure that any UI decisions we make are prepped for the iPad swipe and tap, as opposed to a double click or a right click. So yeah, obviously the Oculus Rift is in our mind. Other systems are in our mind. The UIA system is in our heads. But yeah, we're obviously, we've got to get something out on one platform first. But yeah, we're keeping the back door open for those other platforms and peripherals.
Excellent. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll have a prayer.
I particularly would buy a steam-powered dinosaur. I particularly would buy a steam-powered dinosaur.
So Chris of Soma is ready to buy a steam-powered dinosaur. Whatever that means.
Oh, you want to buy a steam-powered dinosaur?
Indeed.
You want to buy two of them, actually.
Okay, I'll write that down. That's good. You've probably funded at least one sprite sheet out of that. That's good, guys. We can keep working for another 45 minutes. 9 minutes. Done. If somebody can concept me up a dinosaur robot, that'd be great. Thank you. Just chuck that in the pipeline because I can do that on a Saturday morning.
I can do that.
But yeah, no, thank you for that purchase. We appreciate it muchly, and God bless you.
Oh, another question?
Does he have any images of any of the characters he's anticipating on putting in his game?
Does he have any pictures?
Yeah, of the characters.
Do you have any character pictures that you can share?
Some character pictures. Give me 1 second. I'll find you some that I can share. Hold on.
Thank you, sir.
One Mississippi.
It's being really funny if you do it. Like screen for 20 minutes. This character picture's good.
I'm sorry, sir, you have a smaller one.
That's Joshua. That's an early iteration of Joshua. He has changed since. I think our art style originally was very Disney, as you can probably tell by him. He looks a bit like Aladdin in a trench coat. We've probably gone a little bit grittier now, realizing that young people, the age group we're going for, has dramatically aged in their tastes in the last 2 years. And so yeah, we've certainly developed Joshua further since then. But that's a great, idea of what we're doing. And you will be able to see other people on our website and blog.
Excellent. Anything else? Questions? Nope. We definitely thank you for your time, and we're gonna.
Thanks for having me.